people are talking about re-evaluating who the real winners are and who are not during this time. The Broadcom numbers released on Friday were impressive. The progress we made people wonder if Broadcom is the best choice. It was more about the perspective, wasn't it, Tim? It wasn't about the numbers. No, the view was great. Let's discuss the year 2027. That's a long-term perspective because they have a clear opportunity. Celebrity becomes relevant sells in the year 2027, because they have a clear opportunity. Last night on Mad Money, Matt Murphy discussed Marvell Tech and shared similar views. I believe there is some misunderstanding. When I asked Matt Murphy about Nvidia's position, he said that Nvidia is still number one. There is enough space for everyone. Broadcom doesn't automatically replace Nvidia. Broadcom and Marvell are both companies that are connected to Nvidia. It depends on who you're working with. Marvell is part of Amazon Web Services, AW. Big tech companies have chosen that since Nvidia is the only major GPU provider, they need to create their own custom chips that run cooler and cost less. There are 3 of them. They are not a zero-sum game. An engine, however, I think there are people who say, you know what, I gotta get off this horse, it's going down. That's about it, David. First, let's talk about Nvidia, which has the stock code NVDA. You already know that. The Biden government is being accused of harming innovation and economic growth by introducing new limits on exporting AI chips. The rules limit how much computer power can be sold to most countries, and will start in 1 year. Nvidia's Vice President of Government Relations Ned Finkel wrote in a blog post that the new Biden rules would not reduce threats but would instead hurt America's ability to compete globally and damage the innovation that has kept the U.S. in the lead. You can see part of that message. He adds that, although these rules appear to be aimed at China, they won't actually make any improvements. New U.S. rules on securities will affect technology around the world, including tech that is already common in game PCs and consumer devices. This is important because it may weaken America's competitiveness on the global stage. Hey Brad, what stands out to me in Nvidia's statement and from industry insiders is their clear goal. They are looking back before the Biden administration and hoping to connect with the Trump administration. There's 1 week left until the inauguration. In the last line from Nvidia, they mentioned that the Trump administration showed that America succeeds by sharing technology with the world and staying competitive, not by holding back. They also said they hope for measures that will make American leadership stronger again. The Semiconductor Industry Association quickly criticized the Biden administration's actions. The Semiconductor Industry Association, they also suggested that the new Trump administration should create new policies. They are trying hard to win over the new government, hoping to get President-elect Donald Trump involved to possibly change some of the upcoming laws. This is a big deal for Nvidia, as shown by a nearly 4% reaction on the screen right now. Much of this is just the nervousness in the market about how strong the backlash from China will be and how much it will affect things. Some of these exchanges can lead to back-and-forth arguments, and in the end, who will be responsible for the consequences? Who will be most affected by this, either positively or negatively? You should consider the concerns involved, as there are there's been about an 11% drop since last week. If you take a look at the 5-day chart, we should also note that this company did just see a new all-time high last week. We will see how well the current administration can handle the transition as they respond to the previous government before the new one takes over. Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang is in China this week and the White House has just announced new export restrictions on AI chips. These changes have led to a drop in stock prices recently. How do you think these new rules will affect Nvidia and other chip companies in the coming year? It's unknown and has never happened before. By unclear I mean the decision is about semiconductors that are specifically made for AI, or intended for AI use, end quote. This means that all game chips would belong to that group. They might be mainly designed for gaming, but they're very much designed to have AI capabilities in them. There are now boundaries in 120 countries, including EU countries like Portugal and Mexico. This situation is unusual. A government body will handle all of this. I can't imagine anything worse for creativity, speed and making money than having someone like a traffic cop in the way. I believe we all care about national security, but this isn't the right approach. I expect the new government to change most of the difficult parts of this and maybe offer some clearer explanations. I think the market's reaction might be too extreme if you're sure that things will change quickly when Trump takes office. Nvidia's stock went down by 2 or 3% because of the feedback from CES 2025. I believe investors viewed it as not a big deal and chose to wait and see what happens with the new government. Given all this, how will these companies manage their foreign relationships, which they have told investors are important for their growth? If this plan goes ahead and starts in 120 days, unless the new government cancels or delays it, they will need to hire many consultants to help manage it. There is a 128-page paper that is not very clear. Each company will need to create its own plan to handle this situation. Many companies won't have a problem, because they don't deal with groups. But when you look at AI systems, companies like Nvidia and AMD, they're gonna have to get, and even Intel, they're gonna have to get very clinical on the exact number of chips they can send to a specific country. I believe the EU's reaction is usually strict and harsh. They say this action is a mistake, and could lead to buying more from companies like Huawei, which goes against what this IFR is meant to do. Okay, I'm here with you now. Mark Newton is the Global Head of Technical Strategy at FrontStack Global Advisors. Good morning, Mark, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Frank. We just heard Rick Reeder say that the market is in a good position. He believes there is more potential for growth. We want to examine parts of the market that are facing some challenges, but also have potential for growth. Why don't we start with the S&P 500?
That works, Frank. Let's check the S&P. So Mark, if you don't mind, if I start. The last month S&P down, we're going to go over here a little bit of weakness down, about 3.5%. So you're saying you see a positive trend generally that makes you optimistic?
I agree, Frank. Even though the market has faced a lot of difficulties this year, starting from last December, the overall longer-term trend shows that it hasn't really broken down.
That's because of technology. The number 5,700 is very significant. Any kind of weakness in the Consumer Price Index, CPI. Investors should really think about this. Even though trends haven't shown it, there has been enough decline for it to become negative now. Do you think the S&P 500 will go up after the CPI report? Will the momentum keep pushing us in that direction even if the CPI is higher than expected, or does it rely on the CPI report?
Reader has some basic ideas. I have my ideas about technology.
Both of them say that the markets are close to reaching their lowest point within the next 3 to 5 days. Long-term trends are still the same. Feelings have become a bit uneasy. Technology has helped keep the market strong. That's a good point, and a reason why we probably will find strong backing there. 5,700 may not always match the lows from last November, but it also shows a longer-term upward trend since 23. Having strong backing is a great time to buy. I think feeling might be a bit more than just a rough idea. I believe the VIX is currently around 20. Many index buyers will be happy to hear that you expect the S&P 500 to rebound. We want to invest in one of the most popular stocks in the market.
Caution, Andy Feth.
It's in a movie. I was just checking the numbers by myself. I'm not as skilled with charts as you are, but I've been looking at the charts since CES, which is just a small part of this chart. Nvidia has dropped about 8% since then. We all believed that the alligator jacket would spark a rise in excitement. I suppose it didn't. You're noticing a trend that suggests there might be a rebound in video.
There's more to this, he says. You don't know the data and posture that design might mean.
I look around. Nvidia has dropped about 8% since then. We all believed that the alligator jacket would spark a rise in excitement. I suppose it didn't. You're noticing a trend that suggests there might be a rebound in video soon.
Yes.
Even with the many difficulties in the semiconductor industry since last July, Nvidia remains a strong winner. Like the overall S&P, the price has dropped back to a point where it looks like a good risk-reward situation. There is a temporary weakness, but it won't affect the long-term direction. Investors want to buy during this decline.
Okay, I just have a question for you.
Nvidia is a chip stock.
Yeah?
These are seasonal stocks. When you examine the details of this stock and see the current direction, are you worried that this growth might stop eventually? Is that the decline? We should let the stock show us what to do. Sadly, we can't go against current upward trends, you understand. Most stocks are down about 15 to 16% from their highs in July of last year. Nvidia is still close to reaching its highest value ever. Still, it looks like there has been a significant drop recently. The key lesson for investors is always put the short-term price action into context of what the longer-term charts are showing. The long-term picture shows that this is doing very well.